Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? We did a video, guys, where we went through the striker evolution, or the striker in and out movement, the musical chairs, the merry-go-round of strikers that Celtic have had since the 21-22 season. And I really wanted to do that video to really underline the situation that we're currently in right now, that coming into the January window, there is no room for ambiguity, there is no grey area. Celtic need a talisman, Celtic need a big hitting striker to come into the squad to replace so much of the goals that we've previously had and let leave the club. And I said in that video, and we set a really big goal, 400 likes. If we got 400 likes on that video, then we would do a winger equivalent one, because the wings for me are just as fascinating in terms of how the club has managed them over the last couple of years, as well as really how they've shaken out. There's been some crazy situations, players working and not working, and really, again, everything else in between. The spectrum of wingers has been absolutely incredible. Now, I'm not too sure if we are going to do another one, because coming out of this international break, we'll start to get more appearances, minutes and stuff like that, and it will kind of skew the numbers. The good thing about doing this right now is the wingers and the strikers, they're at the exact same point in time when it comes to this stage of the season. And yeah, I suppose January is probably the next real benchmark, but yeah, that's just something that comes to mind. But I do think centre-backs could be one that could be somewhat interesting, because we've had a lot of moving parts in that department over the last couple of years, and I know that's something you guys might be interested in. And midfield has been very busy as well, but I don't know if it's just that they're a bit harder to categorise, in terms of, like, for the striker video we had the 1A, B, 2 and 3 situation. In this video today, we're going to have left and right, 1 and 2 being the kind of main spots that we're looking at. And as you know, with the amount of wingers we carry, we do have more depth than that, but that's the kind of the main kind of top level we'll be looking at for the squad, as well as the transfer activity that goes alongside that, the goal return, and yeah, really everything equivalent to what we did in the striker video. But after making the striker video and setting up for this one extra piece of context I wanted to add in, if you like, to the entire forward line, is that we made a lot of money in this transfer window. And the reason I've used this season in particular as the line in the sand where to start this journey, this odyssey of transfers with, is because it's the first season after the season that shall not be named. And you've got to imagine the club, its goals, its targets, its budgets, everything was geared towards that season, which is why we held on to some guys, which ended up getting sold in this summer to bring in the Ange Postecoglou era with some working capital. But as you'll remember from the striker video, we had a striker department that started off with a striker valuation of just over £13 million in terms of what it cost us to buy those guys, mainly because Albion Ajeti is down at £5.5 million, and then the acquisitions in the 21-22 season of Giacomakis and Kyogo. And if we just stick to precisely the forward department here, Odsonne Edouard being sold to Crystal Palace for £16.3 million, and even Vicun Bayo leaving for Belgian football for 1.6 brings it in at just a shade under 18 million. Keep that number in the back of your head for a moment, because the 21-22 season was a very active transfer window. It was Ange Postecoglou's first year in charge, and Celtic went out and really rebuilt the squad from top to bottom. We brought in Jota on loan from Benfica, we had James Forrest, and we actually had Owen Moffat feature throughout this season, predominantly across the left hand side. And in the right hand side, we brought in Liel Abada for 4 million. We had Mikey Johnson and Ben Gannon-Doak featured twice in this one. He also featured in the striker video, so him down in this third winger position, it's just his kind of position in the squad overall, isn't it? When we get to the January window, we then make the acquisition of Daisen Maeda. That was kind of sealed up and lined up beforehand, but we had to wait for the Japanese season to end. And across all competitions, you know, the wings have produced a lot of goals here. James Forrest and Mikey Johnson will have played left and right off the bench and starting different games. I've not went into it that forensically, but I do remember under Ange Postecoglou, Liel Abada got 54 appearances. He was ever present, and through large parts of this season when, like, maybe Kyogo picked up an injury and, you know, other things like that happened. Owen Moffat, you know, played 4 times, and it felt like every time Owen Moffat was playing, it was like backs to the wall situation where we had either an injury crisis or really nobody else available. Liel Abada even starting at centre forward on occasions. But with Abada on 54, Jota on 40, they were very much our first choice left and right wingers. In between Forrest and Johnson, again, they're just the supplementary guys to come on. And 20 appearances for Mikey Johnson. I did really feel that this was the season that broke the camel's back for him, because this was a fair amount of minutes to really make an impact, and sadly it just couldn't really come off for him. And James Forrest, I tried to find this, it wasn't too easy, so maybe you guys in the comment section will know this, but I'm pretty sure this was the season that got him the contract he was on that he's on at the moment. He's currently, in the 21-22 season, he was 29, and I'm fairly sure it was around then he got his new contract. Transfermarkt says something different, but anyway, a decent season for Forest, and again, under a new manager, kind of rebirthing himself once more. And Daizen Maeda coming in January made a good impact. 22 games, 8 goals, 5 assists is nothing to turn your nose up at. Very good, kind of starting point, especially having just played a full season in Japan to then go into a summer. But the valuation of Daizen's on loan at this point in the 21-22 season. Jota is on loan also. Johnson, Doak, Moffat, Forrest. We had all these guys in the building already for the youth academy, and Leila Bada at 4 million is the entire spend. And if we look at the value, even including Albiana Jetty for the strikers and couple it with the wingers, it actually comes in to be basically where Odsonne Edouard and Vikun Bayo's transfer fees come in at. So there's a nice kind of little jump point there. As I say, we can just to further kind of underline that, I guess. But it doesn't stay that way for long, because when we come into the 22-23 season, we signed Jota on a permanent deal for 7.5 million, along with Daizen Maeda for 1.5 million, which just seems like an absolute bargain right now. But we also make the addition of Sead Haksabanovic for 2.5 million. So our left-hand side is still Jota firmly in as number 1, Haksabanovic in at number 2, and James Forrest being in at that number 3, kind of can play both sides type position, which, is a decent role for him to be at. On the right hand side, it is Leila Bada and Daizen Maeda. Now, the thing to remember about this time of Ange and Celtic and everything as well, as you can see, Haksabanovic played 40 times. His goal return, our goal contributions, 5 goals, 4 assists, it's basically 1 in every 4 games, was seen as an absolute catastrophe, which, it's certainly not up to scratch, is it? But being behind someone like Jota, who's bringing in 15 goals, 12 assists, is number 1. Like, Jota's doing great. But number 2, that's not really a bad, looking at it, on paper in the cold light of day, it's not really a bad first season from Haksabanovic, but we did all feel, I suppose, like he wasn't really up to it too much. Daizen Maeda plays 49, Leila Bada plays 47. Now, both of these guys have a bit of versatility as well, but Jota on the left was the cry this season. It had to be Jota on the left, which meant Daizen had to be on the right whenever Abada wasn't, between the two of them, they really jostled for position. We never seen Daizen play through the middle at this stage, and yes, sometimes Daizen would come off the bench and maybe come on to the left hand side, and we've seen some different things mixed up. But in the first season, when we were really so Daizen, Abada, and we also have a wee bit of Rocco Vata coming into the mix for 4 appearances, didn't really do too much. Leila Bada, 13 goals and 9 assists as well, very worthwhile contribution. Bringing in the total wings is 49 goals, 34 assists. Now, the assists is 1 less than the year before. I think we can just call that par, essentially. But an increase of 9 goals on the wing contribution from last season is a lovely increase. But the valuation now of the wing department has severely went up. It's now 15.5 million now that we've made the signings of Jota and Maeda permanent, and we've also signed further reinforcements in Haksabanovic. We had Champions League football and everything was looking really good. The squad was really primed. Leila Bada, at 20 years of age, for the last 2 seasons has got over 100 appearances for Celtic, over 25 goals and 20 assists or so. Frightening numbers, absolutely frightening. And I remember at this time really thinking about Leila Bada as probably the prime asset in the squad that we could sell for big money to like another team in Europe. Obviously it doesn't eventually go that way, but him alongside Jota and even Daizen Maeda still coming in with 11 goals and 7 assists across 49 appearances, nowhere near the same amount of starts as he comes to become accustomed to. The wings are deep, the wings are vibrant, there's competition, there's variety of styles, there's genuine pace, and you can really see that in the numbers. It reflects massively well. But then coming into the 23-24 season, some things change up a little bit. Jota is sold to Saudi Arabia in the summer. We have the return of Brendan Rodgers, and Jota being sold for 29.1 million is absolutely incredible in terms of a transfer fee from Celtic and everything that went around it. And we know the dance that happens. Jota comes back eventually, but that was a huge windfall, and Celtic at that point in time went out and really did splash the cash, it must be said, across the season. Our left wing, we bought £4.75 million worth of Lewis Palma, £2.5 million of Yangang. We still had Forrest, and we did still start the season with Haksabanovic. Daizen Maeda starts to make the right hand side much more his own, and he comes in as kind of winger 1 on the right hand side with Leila Bada in at number 2. We spend 1.75 million on Marco Tilio to come in here, and Rocco Vata is in the building still as well. Now, Haksabanovic only makes 2 appearances across the season and is then loaned out very quickly into Stoke or something like that, so we don't really need to think about him. And Mikey Johnson, this was the time where he sort of huffed and puffed. He got 12 appearances, 2 goals, 2 assists, and then he was loaned out in January and eventually sold, I think, in the following summer. So again, not really a big feature in the squad depth or really the thinking for the team. But looking at Palma, Yang and Forrest on the left hand side here, again in numbers, Palma did arrive very well, didn't he? 10 goals, 10 assists, there's no getting away from it, and it's a bit of a highlight reel package, a lot of them, fair play to him. Yang, 31 appearances, 1 goal and 3 assists, with James Forrest doing something similar. But the right hand side is where it got a bit more interesting. So Daizen Maeda owning that position now with 10 goals in 36 games, but Lila Bada going down to 11 appearances, 1 goal, 1 assist. And this was, of course, I think we know everything that's happened in the real world, or outside of football, the beginning of the 22-23 season this is, isn't it? 23-24, I beg your pardon. Lila Bada goes on to be sold to MLS in March for 8 million. So we can kind of take Lila Bada out of the 3. I think he might have had an injury at some point as well. And we signed Nicholas Kuhn in the January window for 5.1 million to essentially replace Abada, because at this point it looks like Palma and Yang, between the two of them, they're meant to be the Jota replacement we've got on the left hand side, and with Abada leaving, Nicholas Kuhn or Tilio should be the replacement for that. And you know, looking at the transfer fees across left and right for Kuhn and Tilio and for Palma and Yang, it's not really a bad strategy. I don't think we've really did too bad in terms of the outlay and the thought process, but it's really the ambition and the calibre, I think, because of, you know, we kind of know how all these guys go. Obviously, it works out for Nicholas Kuhn, so that's like a 1 in 4, isn't it? But with all of this transfer activity, the value of our winger department is minus 7.5 million. What does that mean? That means we have banked 7.5 million from transfer activity, and now this is the wings that we have for the season. Nicholas Kuhn joins in January, 18 appearances on the right hand side, I'm pointing this way, 3 goals, 3 assists. I say Tilio and Vata don't do very much to be worthwhile in the kind of the depth conversation overall, and we really felt it. We really felt it this season. The goal contributions go massively down. Last year we were at 49 goals. This year it's 35. The year before, we were about 34 assists, weren't we? It's down to 25. So we've made a lot of money. We've kind of refurbished the place as well, with some guys that have put up some numbers. But yeah, ultimately net, we've banked a lot of money and lost a lot of goals. So there should be some room here for some further investment, you would think. Again, bearing in mind we're in the Champions League and everything else that comes along with that. We move into the 24-25 season. Rocco Vata leaves for 280k. Haksabanovic is eventually sold for 2 million, and Mikey Johnson is eventually sold for 3.5 million. He did make an appearance right before heading out the door. But in the absence of Jota and the furore of who's playing on the wings, Yangs and Palmas and Kuhns and everything else, Daizen Maeda emerges as the number 1 choice left winger for this season, with Louis Palma coming in at the number 2 position. On the right wing, it is all about Nicholas Kuhn, and James Forrest and Yang are both kind of filling in behind him on the right hand side, and both of them get shots to play, of course, on the left if and when Palma hasn't become available. Palma is eventually loaned out in January. He makes 12 appearances this season, no goals or assists. And some of the games this year, like I was at them, I forget who it was, we were at home till like Ross County or something. In the entire first 45 minutes, the whole Celtic team were like giving the ball to Palma, and it was like time to do something, buddy, kind of attitude, and he just absolute deer in the headlights. Now he's doing very well in Poland, and who knows, his story might not be over yet, but he leaves in January and Jota comes in January, so we kind of get Jota replaced. You know, Palma was the Jota replacement alongside Yang. Palma leaves, Jota comes in. But on the left hand side, Daizen Maeda's numbers are off the charts. 51 appearances, 33 goals and 12 assists. The Champions League campaign is a resounding success. The front line is absolutely tickety-boo firing off. And on the right hand side, on 51 appearances, Nicholas Kuhn, 21 goals, 15 assists. This is peak. This is pretty much as good as it's been. It's not pretty much, it basically is. Now, these two individuals, the first choice left and right winger, are not overperforming, but they are excelling. They are really kicking on in a big way. When you look at the numbers that Forrest is putting up, as well as Yang, Now, Jota comes in January, and before he gets injured, 16 appearances, 5 goals, 2 assists is brilliant. But Dyson and Kuhn are basically the show here, and with the transfer activity that we've actually carried out this season, we didn't spend any money on Jota. As you've seen in the striker video, we actually made money on bringing Jota back by giving Ren Kyogo, so Jota for me is no expense in this situation. So the value of the wingers, we've made 13.28 million euros, but this season, because of the brilliance of Dyson and Kuhn across the season, and Kuhn was patchy, Dyson was patchy, 76 goals and 42 assists is incredible. And as you know, Dyson did get a bit of a spell in centre forward here, so maybe some of those goals maybe get attributed to the striker position here, but that is absolutely insane. We have more than doubled the goals from the wide areas from the year before, and the assists is not too far off a similar percentage in growth either. So we're coming into the 25-26 season, the one that we're in right now. Now we know that Dyson Maeda is the first choice left winger, but now at this point we also know that he was meant to be leaving. He was meant to be packing his bags, packing his locker, and it was going to be arigato Dyson. It was going to be thanks for the memories and all the best going forward, but it didn't happen. Nicholas Kuhn, though, was sold for 19 million euros to Como, and Marco Tilio was also sold in this window to Rapid Vienna for 1.5 million. Now, we know Jota's injured, and we know Jota's going to be injured basically until the new year. We cannot really think of him coming into this. So, with Kuhn sold, we think we're selling Dyson, and we know we don't have Jota. We should be looking to buy 3 or 4 wingers in this window. We bring in Michel-Ange Balikwisha for 5.2 million. We bring in Sebastian Tineke for 6.4 million. And behind Dyson, the left wing, like names and numbers and money, doesn't really get any better, more formidable. Now, for me, the 1.5 million that we spent on Ben Negren was 100% a winger buy. The club definitely thought they were going to be playing him right wing, and I think on arrival at the club, Brendan and everyone and Ben Negren, I've spoke to him in person, he is not a right winger. It's quickly been found out that that's not really the gig he's going to be able to play in the Celtic team, and I think we should be attributing him later on to the midfield. But I do think for the way the squad has been built, they have imagined that Negren's going to come in and play right wing with Forrest and Yang in and behind him at position 2 and 3. But we know Jota can be or will be winger number 1, because Jota on arrival, when he's returned, Dyson's been the man owning the left wing, and Jota adapted very well to playing on the right. But there may have been some thought that when Dyson leaves, Jota could just go back to the left, and Negren's not really a right winger. We've still got Forrest and Yang playing right wing. We should still be looking for a right winger, but I guess we're planning on playing Jota right wing going forward, because Balikwisha and Tuneke, the amount that we've spent on them and their profile and everything else, you've got to imagine that that's the way that they've been brought in. This season so far, by selling Kuhn and Tilio, now we have spent some money, Balikwisha, Tuneke and Negren. Sizable outlay, no two ways about it. But we have still made a profit on our wings of 20.68 million, and currently at this stage in the season, across all of our wings, and I'm including Negren in this, which is very generous of me, we have 13 goals and 9 assists from the wide areas. It's just not been enough, and this has been a real step down in trip. Now, from one thing that we've seen in the last couple of seasons as we've brought people in is, like Dyson and Kuhn, for example, they both kind of peaked and crescendoed together, which was lovely for us, and maybe put that down to the manager, as well as maybe the environment of the rest of the squad being in a good place. We've not really looked at midfield or anything like that. And looking at the guys we've got now, a lot of them are very fresh back in the door. Jota isn't even available. Who knows what's happening with Yang and Forrest at the moment? New manager, interim appointments, and how they've been managed. I think we're all surprised to see Martin O'Neill play Yang, and Martin O'Neill signed up to the Yang gang in the aftermath of his appearance, the post-match press conference or whatever. But right now, not only the striker department, which we highlighted in the last video, but the wings, and by extension the entire front line, which was originally funded by selling Odsonne Edouard and Vikun Bayo. And whether you want to think, I know we spent some money on Edouard, right? But that money has snowballed into all of these goals that we've had throughout this year, over these years, the success that we've had, and we're still 20 million to the good. There is a lot of importance for me on the striker, the arrowhead, the number 9, the talisman that we need to buy in January. And if you missed that video, I'll link it at the end of this one so you can check it out. And, depending on what if the new manager comes in and has a different style, maybe some of these signings actually look like they fit the puzzle a little bit better, and maybe some of the deficiencies we've had quickly go away. But all things being equal, let's maybe even start to think of it as the support to the striker, those guys that will play in those advanced areas, whether it be wide or, you know, whatever the tactics will be for any new manager. We expect Dyson to leave in January, which is only going to put the wing department into further profit. And yeah, Tuneki started well. We all like Tuneki. Balikwisha, we hope he can get going. But that's kind of where the conversation ends. But there's a lot more, there's a lot of goals being left on the table. Celtic have the resources, have the ability, and have the need to go and find another Nicholas Kuhn, go and find another Dyson Maeda type. Now, for where we're at, do we spend as much as I think that we need on a striker? I'm not so sure. I think, you know, I've been really surprised with Nicholas Kuhn, how well he turned out. Tuneki, I think, he turned out fantastically. And if the club signed another one of these guys, it's around 5 million quid. I'm not too sure I would be against it, as long as, you know, they deliver. But as you guys know on the channel, we're not short of suggestions, and as we get closer to the January window, a primo support striker or a winger, right mid. You know, these are the sort of frames, the little bubbles, the profiles that we'll be thinking about, as well as a striker coming into the January window. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I kind of wanted to kind of reference the forward line a little bit more and put these two videos together. So like I said earlier, if you haven't caught the last one, be sure to check it out. And yeah, let me know what you think in terms of the winger situation. Is the current state of the wings right now, when Jota returns to fitness, will it actually look and feel a lot better under a new manager very quickly, or is it still desperate stages? Once Dyson goes, that will be a huge swathe of goals and assists that will be leaving the team again, that needs further replacement, as well as putting the wing department into further profit. How dire is that situation? Is that a top priority for January? Can we make, you know, lemonade out of the situation we've got right now? Let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comment section down below. If you haven't done so already, please do hit like and subscribe for more content like this. On screen now is some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Hail, hail, and yeah, mo on the hoops.